Welcome back to Newsstream 360, bringing you the latest news from around the world. Good evening. Tonight we bring you a story that sits at the crossroads of politics, law, and the very foundation of America's economic future. In a nation built on commerce and innovation, the stakes have rarely been higher. At the heart of this unfolding drama is a conflict that could reshape not only your wallet, but the entire direction of the U.S. economy and its influence on the world stage. The decisions made in the coming weeks may impact everything from the price of groceries to the security of your job. President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs, some reaching an astonishing 145%, have ignited a fierce constitutional battle. These measures, intended to protect American industries, have instead triggered a legal firestorm, pitting the executive branch against the judiciary in a test of governmental limits. The courts have stepped in, blocking the tariffs and directly challenging the president's authority. This confrontation has sparked a debate over the separation of powers, raising questions about who truly holds the reins of economic policy in America. But this is more than just a legal or economic dispute. It's a battle over the soul of American governance, over who gets to decide the nation's financial fate. The outcome could redefine the balance between the branches of government for generations. The precedent set here will echo through future presidencies, determining how much power a president can wield in times of economic uncertainty or crisis. It's a moment that will shape the boundaries of executive action for years to come. The ripple effects extend far beyond Washington. From the ports where goods arrive, to the factories where Americans work, to the global markets that set the pace of international trade, these decisions will touch every corner of the economy. Tonight, we'll break down the history behind these tariffs, the legal fight now raging in the courts, and what's truly at stake for every American family and business. This is a story about power, money, and the uncertain future of the United States, a high-stakes standoff that will define the nation's path forward. To grasp today's crisis, we must look back. Tariffs have shaped American politics since the nation's founding, once serving as the government's main revenue source. After World War II, the U.S. championed free trade, believing open markets would bring prosperity and peace. For decades, both parties agreed. Lower trade barriers meant growth. President Trump broke with this tradition, arguing that free trade deals hurt American workers, and that emergency powers were needed to fight back. Using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, he imposed sweeping tariffs, bypassing Congress. Critics say this stretches the law, letting the president sidestep Congress's constitutional authority over trade. This bold use of IEPA is now at the heart of the legal battle shaking Washington. The crisis escalated quickly in 2025. After a brief pause, the Trump administration unleashed new tariffs, citing a national emergency over unfair trade practices. Federal courts responded with a stunning rebuke, ruling that the president's use of IEPA was an overreach. These decisions blocked tariff collection for certain importers, casting doubt on the entire policy. The White House immediately appealed, vowing to fight to the Supreme Court. For now, a temporary stay keeps the tariffs in place, heightening uncertainty. The administration projects strength, insisting trade talks continue, but the legal cloud looms over every negotiation. Foreign leaders and markets are left guessing. Can the president deliver on his threats or promises? The nation waits for a definitive ruling that could reshape the balance of power. The stakes have never been higher. The courts didn't set out to judge whether tariffs were good or bad policy. Those questions, they said, belong to the political branches. Instead, judges focused on a deeper issue: the scope of presidential power under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. They questioned whether the president truly had the authority to impose sweeping tariffs by declaring a national emergency, especially when Congress had not explicitly granted such power for trade disputes. Judges found the administration's national emergency claim too broad, warning that if accepted, it could allow the president to bypass Congress on almost any trade issue simply by invoking emergency powers. They argued that IEPA was designed for genuine crises like war or terrorism, not as a tool for waging trade wars or settling economic disputes with other nations. The Constitution, after all, gives Congress, not the president, the primary authority to regulate foreign commerce, a power rooted in the very structure of American government. The courts warned that if the president could declare emergencies for trade at will, Congress's constitutional role would be reduced to a mere formality. The Justice Department, however, pushed back forcefully, insisting that the president must have the flexibility to respond quickly to unforeseen economic threats, especially in a rapidly changing global landscape. Government lawyers argued that national emergencies are inherently political questions, often involving sensitive foreign policy judgments that courts should hesitate to second-guess. In their view, such decisions are best left to the executive branch, which can act swiftly and decisively when the nation's interests are at stake. This legal standoff sets up a classic constitutional clash, one that pits the principle of judicial review against the broad claims of executive power. At its heart, the case asks, who decides the limits of presidential authority in times of crisis, the courts or the president? With the lower courts divided, the case now heads to the Court of Appeals, where both sides are preparing for a high-stakes legal showdown. Many expect the issue to ultimately reach the Supreme Court, where the justices will be asked to draw the line between necessary executive action and congressional oversight. The outcome of this case will define the limits of presidential emergency powers for years, perhaps generations to come, shaping the balance of power in American government. As the nation watches, the constitutional balance between Congress and the president hangs in the balance, awaiting a final verdict. News of the court rulings sent global markets soaring as investors hoped for an end to the trade war. The initial reaction was one of optimism, with traders and analysts alike speculating that this could mark a turning point in a conflict that has rattled economies worldwide for months. Headlines flashed across financial news networks, and the mood on trading floors was electric, as if a heavy weight had been lifted, at least for the moment. Wall Street and European stocks jumped and the dollar strengthened, signaling renewed confidence. Investors poured money back into equities, betting that the worst might be over. The surge was mirrored in markets from Asia to Europe as global investors recalibrated their expectations. For many, it was a welcome respite from months of volatility and uncertainty. But for American businesses and consumers, uncertainty reigns. While markets celebrated, Main Street remained cautious. Small business owners, already stretched thin by rising costs, wondered if relief would ever truly arrive. Families continued to scrutinize their budgets, unsure if the headlines would translate into real change at home. Companies that restructured to cope with tariffs now face whiplash. Should they reverse course or brace for more changes? Many manufacturers had shifted supply chains, renegotiated contracts, or even laid off workers to survive the trade war. Now they're left in limbo, weighing the risks of making yet another costly pivot. For families, tariffs have quietly raised prices on everything from electronics to groceries. The impact is felt at the checkout line, where even small increases add up over time. Parents worry about affording back-to-school supplies, while others put off big purchases, waiting to see if prices will finally come down. Relief remains elusive, as tariffs stay in effect pending appeal. The legal process could take months, leaving businesses and consumers in a holding pattern. For now, the costs and complications of the trade war remain a daily reality. The administration claims short-term pain will yield long-term gains, but critics point to job losses and higher costs. Some officials argue that these tough measures are necessary to protect American industries, while opponents warn that the damage to jobs and communities could be lasting. The economic debate is now central to the political fight over America's future. Lawmakers on both sides are seizing the moment to push their agendas, and the issue has become a rallying cry for protesters and politicians alike. The court's intervention has added a new dimension to this high-stakes battle. Legal experts say the outcome could set precedents for how trade policy is shaped in the years ahead, making this more than just a short-term skirmish. The outcome will shape the economic landscape for years to come, influencing not just markets and businesses, but the daily lives of millions of Americans. As the story unfolds, both Wall Street and Main Street are left waiting and hoping for clarity. America's legal drama is under a global microscope. Allies like Canada and Europe welcomed the court rulings, hoping for relief from disruptive tariffs. Yet with tariffs still in place, they remain cautious, wary of celebrating too soon. European diplomats hope U.S. checks and balances will prevail, but prepare for renewed trade tensions if not. For China, the rulings are both a propaganda tool and a strategic complication, as uncertainty clouds negotiations. Developing nations caught in the crossfire hope for stability and an end to economic volatility. The world is reminded how deeply U.S. domestic politics shape global markets. As America debates its future, the world waits for clarity. The stakes are global, and the outcome will reverberate far beyond U.S. borders. When America sneezes, the world still catches a cold. The tariff fight has sparked a fierce legal debate. Critics argue the president has dangerously stretched IEPA, setting a precedent for unchecked executive power. They say Congress, not the president, should control trade, and the courts are right to intervene. Supporters counter that the president needs broad authority to respond to economic threats, especially from rivals like China. They warn that limiting executive power could weaken America's negotiating hand. Both sides agree. The Supreme Court's decision will set a historic precedent. The core question, who decides what counts as a national emergency, will shape the presidency for generations. The stakes for American democracy could not be higher. America stands at a crossroads. The tariff battle is now a test of the nation's checks and balances, with the Supreme Court poised to decide the limits of presidential power. The outcome will define not just this presidency, but the authority of all future presidents. Meanwhile, businesses, consumers, and global partners remain in limbo, waiting for clarity. This crisis is a stark reminder. Government decisions have real daily consequences. The rule of law and separation of powers depend on vigilant courts, assertive Congress, and an informed public. As the legal fight continues, the nation must ask, how much power should one person hold in a democracy? The answer will shape America's future, and the world's. The story is far from over.